I didn't think I was going to survive. That point in my life when I had that pregnancy loss, I was like, oh my God, this is the end of me. And like, I don't think I can make it out. Cooking saved me. And I just started cooking. I cannot tell you what I cooked that day. We had to ship out thousands and thousands of jars. Wow. Our capacity to make in one day was 32 jars. So we are working with Friday Ventures, and they're like our biggest investor.
Welcome to the Caravan podcast. In today's episode, we're joined with Maryam Ishtiaq, the founder of It's Actually, a halal beef bone broth brand here based out of Dallas, Texas. We're going to learn a bit about how Maryam immigrated from Pakistan to the United States, settling in Atlanta, pursuing the desire to become a physician, and then changing last minute to pursue marketing, landing in New York, becoming an influencer, and then finding an opportunity to come to Dallas as a head of e-commerce. But even that journey led to her finally discovering and accepting that food and cooking was always her big love, and how she took those skill sets and that passion into building a business in bone broth. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Caravan podcast. And it's Valentine's Day. I don't know if we should reference that or not, but today we're joined with an incredibly special guest and a Dallas local, Maryam Ishtiaq, co-founder or founder fully, which is rare these days, of It's Actually.
Yes. And
so you had a crazy journey. I mean, you wear a lot of hats. I mean, I think every time I tell people I'm interviewing, they're like, oh, she did this. And then like, oh, actually, she did this. I'm like, what? It's like if you have Mary Poppins in the bag, there's just like different careers, but it's all effective. Like you've done them all. So influencer, blogging, YouTubing, content creation, being on TV, and now, you know, doing pop-ups. Like I can't list them all. So, but right now the main focus for you has been It's Actually, which is I guess a CPG brand, particularly focused in the broth industry. Yeah. But before you got there, clearly you've had a lot of changes in your careers and career shifting, as one of our guests that we had previously focused and highlighted that. So can you run us through a little bit, at least how you first started with, more importantly, cooking? Yeah. How'd you get into that?
So cooking has always been like a big part of my life. You know, I come from a Punjabi family. I watched my mom and my grandma cook and stuff. But I think there was this level of therapy that I, you know, found in cooking in general. My first memory of cooking was actually going to a cooking competition. This is when I was like 6 or 7 years old.
Wow, they started you early.
Dang.
But it was because I wanted this like pen. So I went to school in Pakistan, and you know, they have like these fountain pens and you like write calligraphy with it, right? So I wanted this pen, but my parents couldn't afford it. So the only way I could have gotten that pen is if I entered this competition. So at 7 years old, I am like making pilau and chutney and trying to win this pen. I did. I got third place, and I did get that pen. And that's like my first memory of like cooking and competition, and then having like this relationship with it, right? Over the years, like obviously when I got older, I moved to the US, lived in Atlanta. That part of me kind of like, you know, didn't get to cook for passion anymore. It was just like a necessity. You're cooking to live and all of that.
How old were you when you moved to Atlanta?
I was 12.
12 years old. Wow,
I moved in 2002. And since then, you know, like I was studying to go to med school, like all of South Asians, right?
The
like
pipeline was starting.
The pipeline was you're either going to be a doctor.
I love, did you just code switch?
Yeah.
You just code switched.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to either be a doctor or you're going to be out of the house on the streets. Like that was the only thing that was you could do, right? So I actually went to school. I was pre-med for 4 years. We were at some point. And then my 4th year in college, I was like, shit, I can't do this, you know?
The streets are calling.
I was like, yeah, literally. I was like, she was like, is that a threat? But no, so I, you know, did a pivot. Like I did all the right things, right? Like I was shadowing, and I was working at this hospital, studying for my MCAT. I was doing all of those things, but I was just not happy. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be in healthcare. It was just that I didn't think that I was meant to heal people this way. I just didn't, it just wasn't me. So I ended up doing a complete switch and I went into international marketing. So I did a BA business administration as my major and I did international marketing. People were like, what the heck are you going to do with international marketing? And I was like, well, I'll figure it out. So I moved. At this point, I've gotten married. I am now moving to New York.
Well, let's back up.
On a pause.
Yeah,
These are huge chapters. So one question I have.
Yeah.
As you're going through med school, OChem, great class, love it.
Yeah.
As you're going through it, were you still like cooking for yourself, family, meal prepping?
Yeah, I mean,
you still did
like,
that.
my mom was very passionate about cooking, right? So like, we were still like catering. By catering, I mean like if somebody needed food for their party, we were making it.
Okay.
Right, but that wasn't going to pay the bills.
Right.
So we were like just kind of doing it as a side thing. It was never like a primary thing. My mom's a teacher. My dad owned a gas station. He's engineer by trade, but like he owns a gas station. And so for us, it was like in order for you to make the ends meet, you have to do everything else. And then cooking was just like the thing that we resorted to get the creativity going.
When it came down to changing your major, was that on your 4th year of college?
Yeah. I was meant to graduate like that May.
Holy.
And I said, heck no. Like, I can't do this.
So what like changed in that particular moment? Was it just the realization?
So the moment was I was working at an ICU unit for pediatrics. I was
a tough
doing
spot.
an internship with a doc at Grady's Hospital. And there was particularly one case that like I just couldn't handle. And it was, a girl that was in the ICU unit. She had burns all over her body. You have to remember, ICU for pediatrics, burns unit specifically. And I internalized that entire thing so much. I walked out of the room because I could not see this child in this state. I walked out and I passed out.
It's severe, and like you can close your ears, but at least for the audience to understand how severe that is, because I had a similar experience, but it wasn't with a child. It was actually more of like a geriatric patient, and they had, when you're in the ICU, also you're pretty much, there's a higher likelihood, I believe, of you dying than surviving. It's like a very, very dangerous spot to be in.
Yeah.
And particularly with burns, because I'm sure you feel like grotesque feeling of like popping a pimple or things like that. Where it is when you have like a severe burn situation, the entire flesh is exposed. It's this yellow pus, slimy, gooey feel. They gauze the entirety of it, and then they like saran wrap it to condense and compress it.
Wow.
And so if it's like your whole body, so in my case, what I witnessed was like an entire, pretty much waist down for this like 70-year-old male, everything. I mean, everything is like burnt to crisp. And it was just, it's like something you see from like a horror movie.
Yeah.
So I can resonate like what you're seeing and
I mean,
walking
it's like,
out.
It's a child. And then like on top of that, it's a state of like, you don't know if this child is going to make it for one, right? But everybody's treating this child as like an exhibit, right? It's like exhibit A. And for me, that was like, I don't think that I can treat people as exhibits. Like, I don't think that I would be good at that. And I would internalize all of it too much. And I was like, maybe this is just not the way I'm meant to be to do this. So I was like, okay, if like it calls me back, then it calls me back. And if it doesn't, then we figure it out. So I was like, you know what? I just need to figure this out. So I just did a career switch. I mean, I did a major switch. And I was like, look, we'll figure it out. So
when it comes to switching to like, science to something like marketing, which is a different type of science, but you immigrated here, right? So a lot of the dreams and ambitions of our parents are on your shoulders, on your siblings' shoulders, right? And so generally people don't go to like marketing. It would be like, okay, let me just be a computer programmer or something like that. Did you see other people that looked like you that were doing marketing that inspired that? Or did it just seem more like the most amphibian like subject that you could do that you can transform into something else? Quite honest with you, I did it because it was the easiest thing I could have done in 2 years. Valid. Right? For me, it was like, okay, I will figure out what to do with this once I graduate. Because for me, it was like I had this ticking bomb on my head about I'm going to get married in 2 years. My parents are not happy with me doing not doing medicine anymore or wanting to do medicine. I needed an out. And that's just like, that's the reality of it. I needed an out. I needed it fast.
And so for me, it was like international marketing. How hard could it be? And so, yeah, I like a lot of the overlaps were like science and like stuff kind of were okay with the trajectory that I had. And it made sense. And so, yeah, it was the easiest thing I could have done in 2 years.
Did you meet your husband in college?
He was graduating college when I was going into college.
Okay, gotcha.
So he was at Tech, and I was at Georgia Gwinnett, which was a community college.
Okay.
So he was like, he knew what he was doing, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing with life, you know? So.
Was his support and advice, like, what was he thinking at that time? Because he's a little bit further ahead. Was he?
Yeah.
Was that helpful to kind of be like, oh, this person's a bit further ahead? What do they think from their perspective?
I think for him, he had, like, if this is what you want to do, this is what you want to do. That was his thing. But I think he couldn't relate to the entire process because, again, he had that 4-year. He did the traditional, like, school stuff, right? Like, he went to Georgia Tech. He knew that he wanted to be an engineer. He was doing that. He didn't want to be a doctor or anything of that sort, right? Like, he wanted to be an engineer, and that's what he did. For me, it was, like, just trying to figure out, like...
what you actually want to end up at.
Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You're lost. And being, like, I'm the only girl. I'm the oldest in my siblings.
How many are there?
I have 2 brothers.
2 brothers,
and I'm
okay.
the oldest. So you could only imagine it was like, you know, she's supposed to be a doctor, paving the way for everybody.
The lab rat needs to... yeah.
And this lab rat...
I mean, like...
and this lab rat is trying to see the streets.
Yeah, they're the test child, you know? Like, you guys have to figure out... I mean, my brother was the first one, right, to figure it out. So, like, whatever he paved, I give credit to a lot of my success to my older brother. He's the one that told me not to do med school, and he's a doctor. He's like, don't do it. But if you didn't go through it, I would maybe still been a doctor.
But you know, the good part for me that made that switch a little bit easier was that I come from a family of doctors. And at this point, my cousin is becoming a doctor. Like, friends that we know that are becoming doctors. And there was a shift in the healthcare industry at that time where they weren't making that much money anymore. They were overworked and underpaid. And so people were like, dude, don't do it. If you have the ability not to do it, don't do it. And I was like, bet. Don't have to tell me twice.
I'll find the ability.
Yeah, I was like, I'll find it.
Yeah.
Wait, let's talk about that. What was the shift that was happening? I don't know if I'm familiar with that. Was it just like the amount of hours they have to work to what you're actually getting paid?
People were working a lot of hours, and then they weren't getting paid for like the same amount of money, right? You have to remember, like, loans for student loans went up. When people were like, when our parents went to school, like the cost of education was not what it is now. And so when people were like, you know, our generation was starting to go to med school and was going through residency, they were getting paid in pennies. And they had stacked up like $500,000 in debt, you know? And so if you had the ability to do that, to do something and be successful at it outside of that, why not?
I think it's a huge misconception. Like, at least seeing my brother go through it and so many of my, like, I did all of pre-med, similar to you, and then all my friends became physicians. And you seriously need to love what you're doing because, yes, to us, it seems like a lot of money, but for how much they had to go through and then how much work they actually have to do now, it's like, it doesn't...
What price are you paying?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, right?
And I think that can be said about every career at this point. It's like there's always a price to pay, but what is that price you're willing to pay?
So as you're making this shift, right,
Yeah.
you're moving to New York, what was going through your mind? Like, you're getting married. It sounds like you're fairly uncertain on where you're going to land career-wise, like your own earnings and things like that. What was going through your head in that moment?
I've never felt so lost in my life. Never lived away from home. I was going to community college, so I lived at home, you know, all of my teens. And then now I'm getting married, moving to a new city at that. I was excited to be in a new city. And I just wanted to start over in a way. And so when we were moving to New York, I was like, this is great. Like, I get to do that. But what I didn't realize that, like, you moving to a new city doesn't give you clarity. And I told myself I was going to give myself a year to figure out what I wanted to do. So whether it was going to be something related to marketing or do I wanted to go back to med school, like, or just go into pursuing medicine in some way. And I gave myself a year. In that time frame, while I'm adjusting in New York, I started consulting for a creative agency.
And this is like 2018, 2019? What year was this?
This is 2017.
2017, okay.
Yeah. It's 2017, and I'm like, okay, you know, like, I can help them build out, like, their strategy or whatever. And this is like, I'm getting paid in pennies, like $25 for like 8 hours of work. But to me, I was like, okay, let me like test it out. And I quickly realized like, crap, I'm like actually really good at this.
How'd you get that gig?
It was a friend of a friend.
Okay, so just referrals, yeah.
Yeah, like my sister-in-law worked for Refinery 29 at that time, and it was like a big media agency. So obviously she had a group of friends who were in media and in marketing, and then I happened to like also move to New York. It was like right time, right place. Things are falling into place, and they needed somebody to do that with like a little budget, and I was like, let me try it. I need to build a portfolio, and that's how I got into it. I think 8 months in or a year in, I was like, wow, like I don't think I'm going to med school now for sure. But while that was happening, my social media presence was growing, right?
So were you posting at the same time? Or
I
what
was
were you
posting on
doing?
Instagram. So like when I lived in Atlanta, I was just posting because Instagram was a new platform. It was never meant to be like what it is now. It was just a thing that like I had. And after I got married and moved to New York, people got really intrigued by like, oh, Southern girl living in the city.
Yeah.
Newlywed, you know? And it was just like those things that like really got eyes on the Instagram page, and it kind of just took off.
So at that point, right, you mentioned that you did not feel the best about your situation.
I didn't.
Right? But online, what was your presence like? Were you like highlighting the wins and not showing like, because I think there's this like conversation that we have a lot with social media in general, right? And the influencers are on there where, you know, oh, what you see is a highlight reel, not like the struggle that they're going behind it in whatever capacity that may be. Did you feel like that's what you were doing at that time, or were you also like sharing like the vulnerable parts too? Because I feel like the vulnerable era is now more so where people can be fully authentic. But back then, I mean, I think when I joined Instagram, it was like 2013, like way back. And it was all being as gilded as possible. So I'm kind of curious what you were kind of going, because was your comments super positive, but internally you're like, I'm still trying to figure things out here?
I think it was a mixture of both. There was obviously the curated part of life, which is like highlighting the best parts of New York and living in New York. But then there was also like in 2017, I was known as the person who was talking about the most stereotypical like things that get you banned, right? Like from social media. Like, and I was being very transparent about those things. But I think the one thing that I wasn't transparent about was how lost I was in career. Like I like was doing all the right things to find myself. But what people were seeing was like, oh, you know, she's going to like go shoot for CoverGirl and she's posting this. Life should be great. I never wanted to be a face of CoverGirl. It was just what was paying the bills.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, then you're like, okay, like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Like, is this what and that's what you'll hear about people in media is that when you get stuck, you get stuck.
I mean, you were young going through this, right? You're like early 20s?
I was early 20s.
How did you traverse that? Because I feel like that's a lot of opinions and voices. And I feel like it's a very, you know, volatile space to be in at that age. How did you navigate that?
I think I let people dictate where I wanted to be. And people will like, you know, this, you can have this conversation all day, every day. It's that, yes, I was doing the things that I wanted to do, but they were not the things that were making me fulfilled. Like I wasn't feeling that sense of fulfillment in any of those things. And I did it for a long time because honestly, that was what was bringing income. And, you know, like being in social media space at that time, like you were making like $250,000 just in brand deals. And who doesn't want that living in the city? And so I really got stuck into it. I got stuck and I got sucked into it. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do.
How did you, was there like, as soon as you got stuck, was there an ever moment like you wanted to get out, or is it just more like a roller coaster where you're like, you're locked in, you can think about going out, but you don't really have time to think about it? Was it kind of like that, or were you able to find space to calculate, okay, what's my exit strategy here?
There was a lot of opinions, a lot of voices that didn't need to be there. I think when people put themselves out there, people start treating people like public property. you know, like you're a park and you can just walk into this park and like take a shit wherever you want to and nobody's going to have an impact. But the truth is, like, everybody who's on social media has a life off social media. And so when, you know, people started doing that, it was like, why does she look like that? Why is she wearing that? Who does she think she is? You know, and then people like media agencies used to also start nitpicking that, like, you should look like this. This is a trend. You need to be dressed like this. It's New York Fashion Week. What are the latest trends? You can't keep up.
Like everyone's an auntie now.
Everybody is like telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And you can't, if somebody who doesn't have clarity as is, and now suddenly like everybody's yapping, you get even more sucked into it and there's just no way out.
So how did, I mean, you hear this a lot from content creators, right? They call it like the privacy tax, which is exactly what you're talking about. But like, how did you like take that experience and then like package that into like the next set of what you were doing with social media? Like, was there like a public version of you versus like a private version? Was it the same? How did you kind of traverse and manage that aspect?
I think my persona on social media has always stayed transparent, no matter what season of life I've been. You can tell when I was going through it, you could tell like, okay, she has a pivot coming. She's in a different season of life. I was very transparent of it. And I think people will say that if you've met me in person, my personality online is exactly the personality you'll see in person. That's just who I am. I think what started happening was that I stopped talking about the clarity that I didn't have. And I was like, I need to figure out what I want to do in my career. If social media is just meant to be just social media, I give you the brand deals. Like, let me give you brand deals and let me figure out what I want to do with my career. And so I just kind of stopped talking about it.
What stopped your transparency at career? Was there something in like internally that you were kind of coiling with?
I think it was more about like people were very harsh about discrediting everything that I was doing. People will open the door and give you an opportunity. What you do with an opportunity is completely up to you. Right? So people were like, she's in the right place. She's in the city. She has all the right people. She must have gotten this because X person opened the door for her. Yeah, people gave me a seat at the table. What I did with that seat at the table was me. Again, I'm always grateful for the people that got me through the door. But what I wasn't okay with was what people were saying about like, oh, she got here because she looked great.
I mean, especially when you think about like, it's just the same thing with anything, right? Like, even if you're running a business, like getting the doorway opened is like a big aspect of it, and it helps accelerate that trajectory of your company. But at the end of the day, like what forms long-term relationships and value is just like people actually doing the work and actually like having trust in like what you're showcasing. So I completely resonate with that message.
I think there's also like a difference that people sometimes get confused, right? Where like there is nepotism by definition, which is like actual family opening the door and getting that privilege.
Yeah.
But then there's also like, I don't know if there's a term for this, but like social nepotism, like a person who does go and meet and befriend and is part of the community, whatever community that may be, whether it be a religious community or a industry community. If you're there building connections, working with people and talking, you're building up your in-person social credit, and that builds a level of trust and quorum with someone else. So when you are looking for opportunities, that person will generally lean towards who are they most familiar with because they feel safest to make that trust and decision for. And people kind of confuse that level of, I'm defining this as social nepotism, that is a level of work that the individual has to do because they still have to take time off in their week to go to these networking events and things like that and build their reps in. And I was talking with somebody about this yesterday. But it's like when you go to conferences, you may never see the benefit immediately, but maybe 10 years down the road, you need a job or something. And lo and behold, the person that you met at this conference has a open slot and you reach out to them, right? And so it's those things are still a level of work and effort that was placed into it to build those relationships and connections. They're not just given to you. But I do think a lot of times people get those things muddied, unfortunately. So when that obviously weighs a lot on you in terms of defining like your hard work that you did, when were you able to start silencing out those who are kind of, adding their opinions or observations, especially as like a young person back then? Because I feel like, again, I really want to highlight, like, you're young, and I think at that point that is such a very, it's like a blue shell crab, right? Like, you're very soft, you can be very malleable. How were you able to find the resiliency to be able, like, okay, I'm being squeezed and I'm going to push back out. This is the road I'm going to take.
My last year in New York, I was probably mad depressed. It was like nothing was like, I wasn't happy with social media. I wasn't happy in my career. And then we were making a move to Dallas. And I took that move to Dallas as maybe this is my new clean slate. It just happened to be when we made that move, pandemic happened. I found out that I was pregnant. Like all of the new chapter of life that I wasn't even aware or anticipating.
So what was the deciding factor to move? So it's like clean slate, but why Dallas?
The thing was, while I was in New York, so let's backtrack a little bit. While I was in New York, I started working for a baby food startup.
Okay. How did you, that's interesting.
So
you were already prepping for the baby.
No, I was.
It's a wild pregame.
They were planting the seeds apparently, and I was watering them. Okay, so I was working for a baby food company as their head of creative. So anything that you saw about this brand, from like brand awareness and like brand strategy, digital media or social media strategy, was coming from me in-house. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I was for like a year and a half. And then I was just like, you know what? Now I'm a creative outside of work because there's social media. And now I'm creative at work. Like, what am I doing? Because a burnout at this point is real. And then I my sister-in-law was working at a tech startup.
In New York?
In New York.
Okay.
And they were looking for a sales and marketing manager. And I was like, well, I've never done that. Let's do a pivot. So I applied for the thing. I've been around people. I had a network of people. And I was like, okay, sales and marketing seems like I can tap into. Let's give it a try. I get into it and I get the job. I do sales and marketing for like 6 months. Help them with bringing in sales for their events, also doing marketing strategy around their events, hosting, pulling in people through the door. That was me. And now I'm like, marketing is still very close to what I'm doing outside. And so at this point, they're looking for a head of e-commerce. And I've never done it.
I mean, e-commerce is still very new at that point. Yeah.
It's a beast. And I was like, I need a pivot. I don't want to be a creative anymore. Can I do this? And I was like, you won't know unless you try. So I apply for the job. I get the job. I am head of e-com at a tech startup. And my place, now my job is to source so it's a gifting platform. It was like a corporate gifting platform. And so you have to source a lot of gifts and products, and you have to build out the consumer experience of how people view gifting. So that's me now. Their warehouse was in Dallas. Now Nabil is working at the place that he's working at, which I'm, for his privacy reason, I won't disclose. Mm-hmm. He needed to build out an office in Dallas. And I'm like, okay, well, eventually we want to have a family. We don't want it to be in New York. Yeah. Work is calling you to Dallas. The warehouse is in Dallas. All right, let's do it. At this point, the baby's not what we're thinking about. It's just a move, setting up roots in hopes that one.
Asking me.
Maybe I should have asked a little more specific about what I wanted in life, is what I've realized.
Where are the balloons?
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, that's what brought us to Dallas, was work. It just happened to be literally 3 weeks in. Yay! So that's how it happened.
Wow. Okay, so that is a lot of shifts, and I think I feel like most like Muslim people that we meet that come to Dallas, it's always like community, and then they find the job. So it's awesome that kind of lined up for y'all. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, did you guys know Dallas? Like, did you have any connection to Texas? Because you guys are both Georgia folks.
He had family here.
Yeah.
But we're like in Dallas proper. His family is like Frisco, Irving,
Yeah.
Plano, right? But we decided to stay in Dallas proper. But that's what was the thing. Like, okay, you know, if family ever moves with, like, you know, moves with us or anything of that sort, there's more family here. So we did it more like for the parents, really.
Yeah.
You know, like if we ever have kids, if they decide to move to a place, like Dallas could be it.
So you're moving to Dallas, new job for both of y'all, new family member coming in as well. Were you excited for this chapter, or were you just like, I just want to get my, you know, settle in first and then like start processing and thinking things on like what next steps are like?
I was excited for the move because I thought that, again, it was going to give me clarity of new place, new city, kind of getting to start over. But then you have to remember, like, I never got clarity from Atlanta to New York. I was not going to get clarity from New York to Dallas for sure. What I did think that was going to happen was my network from New York would follow to Dallas, right? So, like, that social media thing that I had built, the community, the brand deals, working with brands would follow me the same way to Dallas. Unfortunately, when I moved to Dallas, it was not good for a creative person to be, right? And then you throw in the pregnancy and you throw in the pandemic. I felt like my career that I did build in New York was gone. And that was a lot to take in, right? Because brands are not pouring money into like people in Dallas the same way. I was coming from like a beauty and fashion industry when it came to brands, right? And they weren't pouring money into people in Dallas.
And Neiman Marcus here was suffering.
Yeah, so I mean, like
Closing
it
shops.
wasn't, but here it was like more of like your like to know it people or Amazon affiliate people, right? I was so used to like going to brand events, going to dinners, networking people on Subway, like giving somebody a call, like, hey, you around for coffee? Like that was a world that I was coming from. So if I reached out to somebody in Dallas and I was like, hey, would love to grab some coffee, they would actually send you a rate. Or like, you know, for an hour, it's like $85. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to work with me.
This is here?
This is Dallas in 2019.
We should be charging people.
Yeah, but you know, but like, I was like, people have forgotten what it is to like network.
Just a chill.
Like, when did asking somebody to coffee just to create a network became a business transaction? And I was like, this is not it. And so then there was that, right? Like the career that I built is now suddenly declining. I'm still working at this tech startup. I'm now pregnant. I'm about to have a baby. It's a pandemic. And I am just lost as ever, you know? So at that point, I'm like, okay, you know, like there's one thing that I did know was that I was going to leave my startup job. It was a pandemic and I needed to be there for Elise. You know, Nabil was still working from home, but then he was working from home, and we needed to have like a parent needed to be there. And so I left my job, and then for 2 years, I was trying to do social media full time, and it was still not fulfilling.
So did you leave that role within like a few months of being in it almost? Or?
Yeah. So I came back after my maternity leave. I gave it like 3 months, and then I was out.
Wow. Yeah. Was that, I guess, making that shift out, right? And because I think when people go into like professional careers, they're usually like, oh, you stay there for at least a year or two before leaving. And sometimes we get stuck into not leaving something that isn't really going to pan out for you at all in terms of what you're actually wanting to work towards. Was there any hesitation with you on that, or was it pretty easy?
I mean, there were hesitations, right? Like, what is life going to be afterwards? And then people always talked about like for mothers to go back to work, it's so much harder. Yeah. And I was like, what if I wanted a 9 to 5 after like giving Elisa 2 years before she goes into like daycare or school? Like, what does that look like? And I was afraid. And I was like, how do I get back into this? but it was like one of those things. But at that time, like I picked cooking back up.
Yeah.
You know, I was cooking, I was putting out more content with cooking. And it was just like I was starting to feel whole again.
Yeah, yeah.
And so cooking was always there. It just wasn't like the front and center of my life.
Makes sense. So on your YouTube, doing some research here, right?
Yeah.
You were very transparent in a lot of stages of your life. And if I remember correctly, like, did you and your partner experience like going through like a miscarriage? And like, what was that like in terms of, you know, being public about it? Because, you know, statistically, it's fairly common for couples to go through these, or for women to go through a miscarriage and pregnancy, but it's sometimes not talked about or even not spoken about within our spaces. What was taking that step like?
So there's a lot of layers to that one. And I think it's important for people to talk about it, for one. And then I hate the fact that I never got to talk about it as openly as I wanted to. I got pregnant shortly after I had Elise. So, you know, 6 months in. Elise was only 6 months when I got pregnant again.
Wow.
And the thing is, like, as a couple, that's a lot to navigate as is, right? Like, we weren't planning for it, but it did. Like, here we are. Now we have to navigate it. Like, okay. But the thing was, like, when we never announced a pregnancy for it. We only announced a pregnancy loss of it. And the comments that I received at that time of my life were similar to, "Are you dumb? You knew not to have a kid so early on."
Just like,
That's what they were telling you?
Yeah,
No
they were
empathy.
like, they were
That's
like,
so inconsiderate.
it's so inconsiderate. They're like, you knew like what can happen. Like you just had a baby. You decided to have another one, and were you dumb? Like, she's so dumb. And I was just like, you do realize like stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, you do realize people talk about like these unannounced pregnancies happening. It's science, is biology. Things happen. But so that was one part of it. And then the other part of it is like, in our community, we're not allowed to talk about pregnancy losses unless like it's you give a birth to a child and then you have to bury a child. Right? And that was hard for me because it was like, oh, it happens. You're not the only one that it has happened to. And I got so tired of hearing that because I was like, but it happened to me for the first time. Like, what do you mean? You know, and I think that's what people don't realize. It's like, yeah, you're right. It happens to a lot of people, but it's happening to me for the first time. I am trying to figure it out. And I think that was the time where I was just like, the depression that I was feeling in New York from not knowing where I was in life, now having to deal with the postpartum of being with Elise, but then also now experiencing pregnancy loss, and then also figuring out what I'm going to do in my career. Like, it was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot to deal with. And I remember at that point in my life, I'm honest about it now, and I've said this on TV and I've said this out loud. I didn't think I was going to survive. That point in my life when I had that pregnancy loss, I was like, oh my God, this is the end of me. And like, I don't think I can make out. And the funny part is, one day I was sitting in the recliner in the nursery and I was staring out the window. And I asked myself, feel free to cut this out if you need to. I know that's a lot to digest. I looked out the window and I was like, what would it be like if I jumped out of it? But then I just decided to go up downstairs and I just started cleaning the kitchen. I started cleaning the kitchen. And I just started cooking. I cannot tell you what I cooked that day. I cooked something for the entire family that day, and cooking saved me. And that was like that you know, like the rope that was going to pull me out of that rut that I was in. That was that. So yeah, you know, like I was getting therapy. I was talking to a therapist. I was navigating through these things. I was still trying to figure out my community. There was just so many shifts, and people were not kind about it. But yeah, for me, that pregnancy loss and leaning to cooking is what saved me. And that's why I talk about cooking for me being therapeutic, because when I'm actually in it, like I am in a sanctuary. Like I feel fulfilled. I feel whole. I feel content. And then that was that's something that I wanted to hold on to. And then fast forward, like now I'm in food, you know, and that's how it happened.
SubhanAllah. I mean, I think well, first and foremost, really appreciate you being so like vulnerable and like sharing that. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to capture your feelings and your experiences in words and also conveying that, because I think so many people go through a variety of challenges, but sometimes they're not really able to figure out how to traverse through it, or know folks who do go through it, right? Whatever that challenge may be. There's this really good book that I read called like The Body Takes the Toll. And in it essentially talks about all these essentially like micro or macro, like there's things that you know are hurting you, but there's so many other sub layers and layers of things that are damaging you, and it's hurting you, like physically your body, right? And in that same light, when it comes to moments of like healing and finding your sanctuary, as you put it, your body kind of just naturally pulls in that direction of finding that safety when your control center, when your conscious mind cannot operate fully. And so letting your subconscious be like, okay, dog, you've been doing a lot. let's move you elsewhere, right? Yeah. And I think that's something when it comes to this line throughout your life from when you were young, where cooking was like this level of solace that you always found, and these moments of change was always present, right? Now I think is an interesting transition for you, right? Because sometimes when we have, being in America, right, we have this mindset of making everything that we have or love, like a hobby or something, into this monetized space. Mm-hmm. And that can be a very dangerous transition of like your sanctuary becoming a career, right? Yeah. And some, a lot of like sheikhs talk about this too, or imams as well, is like, they love seeking knowledge for the sake of Allah, right? Yeah. But when it comes to sharing that, they always have to check their intention. It's like, am I doing this for a cloud, or am I doing this for sincerity of like sharing this knowledge for Allah, right? So similarly, for you with cooking, like this was your safe space. This is, something that's very intimate and very close to you and to your identity. Mm-hmm. When it became more of a career path, were you afraid that this may get tarnished, or that the critics may ruin it?
I think I felt that way early on. So, at this point, I was obviously like honing my craft, but then I was also trying to build it actually. And I was worried that people would take that and be like, what is she doing? She doesn't know anything about this. And for 8 months, I was just like, am I delusional? Like that I think that this could be a thing. But then I had like this moment. I don't know who I was speaking to. No, it was Dr. Chima. Dr. Chima, she was opening up a med spa here in Rockwall. And Dr. Chima herself is an OBGYN. She was a practicing OBGYN, and now she has her own med spa. And she was just like, you've been sitting on this idea of the broth, like, for a little while. Like, what's the hesitation with it? And I was just like, well, I don't know anything about it. Like I make it for me. I was posting videos online and they were going viral, but like I didn't think that I was going to turn into anything. So she was like, why don't you just like bring samples to my opening for her med spa? And I was like, yeah, we could try that. Like there's no harm in it. But and that happened. We actually like figured out a way to like create 30 jars of broth, make them shelf stable, and then all of that. And like that was a lot for us to do at that time, right? Like for somebody, like for people that don't know how to do broth.
Yeah.
It's very different to make the broth and put it in a deli container and giving to a friend versus now making it for like a consumer, which is shelf stable. And so sells out in like 30 minutes at her thing. Wow, people are like trying the broth on tap, like they're tasting it. They're like, I've never really had broth like this, but like it's great. And there was one mom that I met that night. She came to the opening, and her son was really, really sick. And she was just like, I'm not gonna have time to make this broth. Like, and I was like, you know what? Just take it. I was like, just take it and try it. And if like you guys like it, then we can figure out some more to send it to you. So I just gave her a couple of jars, and she goes home, and I wake up to a message. And the text message was like, this was liquid gold in a jar. My son, who wasn't able to talk, for days, who hasn't been able to eat for days, was able to eat this morning, and he was able to get a good night's rest. And you know what happened in that moment?
You became
It
a
took
doctor.
me back. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
Take me out of those streets. I was like, put me back in the kitchen.
We
Let's
got
go.
free housing again.
So I was like, it took me back to that moment where I was like, I don't know if you remember when I was like, I don't think I'm meant to heal people this way. That moment was that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, broth. It was healing me in ways. And then I shared it with somebody else and now healed that person. So when it's actually started becoming like a thing, we were now starting to like produce enough to like ship it out. It became like an e-commerce business, like direct to consumer business. We had this weird stat, not weird, fortunate enough to be able to do it. 80% of our patients were cancer patients going through radiation and chemo. Why? Because we're the only broth that was low sodium. And we created it that way. People, like, if you drink the broth right now, you'd be like, it just tastes like water. You add a pinch of salt and you're like, oh my God. You know? And it's like, we did it that way because what was happening is that people weren't able to get a clean broth at that point in their life. That stage of recovery and that stage of being ill, they weren't getting. And then you toss in being Muslim, there's no halal broths that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is our calling. Like, this is it. And so now we're like, you know, making the broth. We're like trying to scale. We, you know, alhamdulillah, we're able to like send broth to people throughout their radiation and their chemos. And we would hear back from people all the time like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, my mom is dealing with radiation a lot better. People like were getting their voices back. People were dealing with inflammation a lot better. And that's why this was such a big deal, because everybody could have done the broth. You can create a good product, but what do you do with that product? It's completely up to you, you know? So yeah, that's cool. I think I'm going to
I love how these puzzle pieces
fit together,
but they're like, you're kind of and this is like, you know, going back to like the topic of, I mean, it's important, right? It's the topic of suicide, right? Because you never really know where these next pieces of puzzles in your life are going to appear, right? You started collecting these puzzles for this brand when you were a child.
Yeah.
Right? And then every time you move, you got another the fact that you wanted to pursue healthcare, right? The idea, the principal value of wanting to help people was there. That's an element that you captured, right? That's your core. Then you move elsewhere. Then you get this piece of puzzle of like marketing and branding and all this element, right? Mm-hmm. And cooking. And then you come here, and then this lady that you met with the med spa who has, you know, clienteles that are obviously health conscious to a degree, right? And it's so fascinating because if at any of those chapters, right, if you decide to stop, right,
I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't know. And this isn't like, obviously our existence is to like, you know, to be goodness to the ummah, being all of humanity, right? Like the gift that you're giving, we all have a gift that we get to share with people we love, even if it's small as smiling, right? And like, hence why it's like that in itself is a sunnah. It's like the fact that because of what you have built out, there's people who can speak again because of that, or they're able to enjoy the food during a very tumultuous and unknown period of their life if they're going to make it or not make it, but at least they can have a warm meal in their belly because of something that you had made and that made it easier for them to get, right? So I think it's so such an important reminder for all of us is that even if you think you're not actively building something, you may actually be getting the pieces to build what you need to, right? And it all will just fall in place. Like you just need to get the next step forward. Sorry, let's off my soapbox.
No, but that's true, right? Because like people saw, and we were talking about this titles when we first started. People were like, she's done this, and no, she's done this, and she's done this, and she's done this. Yeah. And you know, like I was able to take all of that and apply to this current stage of my life.
I mean, think about like even like the head of e-commerce. Like you have
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
that is direct like experience on like how to build an online shop direct to consumer, analyze it, all that stuff. I mean, that's all applicable too. I mean, it's I don't know. I feel like when I talk to a lot of people, you can see like how they think, and sometimes they project the way they view the world onto you. And like the way that I see is like, I don't really think of the world in box and buckets, right? It's like, it's most entrepreneurs will tell you like everything's kind of open for rain, and I'll figure out whatever I need to do. Okay. If I need to be a CFO type of person, I'll do that. If I need to be a marketing person, I'll do that. And it seems like a lot of the criticism that you've been facing throughout your journey has been like those people that are really thinking, I'm like, okay, well, she wanted to be a doctor. She's doing marketing. How is she doing a broth company now? And like you found a really like good way to like take all those bits and pieces and kind of package it together and really start this brand. Now, what I really want to talk about is like you went from like basically being supported and pushed by a very close friend, it sounds like, that started that med spa and was like, hey, like come here, like let's just launch this and see how it goes.
Yeah.
You're getting really good like traction in 30 minutes. But how did you go from like that to like actually making like a scalable brand and like the entire like back end office operation? Because I get that there's like a major transition from like making it for your friends to even making it to 30, but it's a bigger transition from going to 30 to like making it a commercial viable product, right? And so like let's talk a lot more about that journey. Like what has that been like? What were some of like the key challenges that you faced there?
So it was Nabil and I. Nabil has a 9 to 5. Like that poor guy got sucked into it. I was like, I need
He's an engineer.
30 jars. Can you imagine like just showing up one day and like, hey, I need 30 jars for a med spa and we have no idea how to do it.
Thanks, bye.
Yeah. And he was just like, this is also in like middle of C-car. So there's that. So Nabil and I, like, he was able to keep me grounded in this entire process. And that's something that he's been really good at throughout my entire journey, whether it was like new opportunities or whatever. He's always been somebody who can keep me grounded. And so what ended up happening was we did something very stupid. So that night that we had the med spa situation, people were like, oh my God, halal broth doesn't exist. And we like just created like, we had a website and we just like created a little like offer on there and we went to sleep. This wasn't like it's actually website what it is today, right? This was just like if people wanted to buy it, they could, and we would figure it out.
Something quickly to throw up.
We didn't think that it was going to be like 1,000 people wanted it, right?
Hey, that's amazing, right? So you just created a landing page just to see.
And went to sleep.
Yeah. Wow. One day.
And I roll over, and I'm like looking at my phone, and I'm like, uh-oh. And Nabil was like, what did you do? I was like, we got broth to make. We got broth to make. And so we had to shut it down. We had to shut the website down for 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because we didn't know anything about it. So now we're like scrambling. We're like getting equipment, figuring out how to have our margins, like buying jars and lids. I'm like sitting on like Canva, making a label, like this was all being done.
It was like Desi weddings where they're like making the biryani. Like
that was
a big cauldron.
That was literally it was legit a family business till it wasn't. Like the grandmas were in there. Like,
but what part of that was a mistake? You think like actually just throwing up the landing page? Because I don't think that's a mistake.
Look, at that time it felt like it, right?
Yeah, I guess because you have to deal with all this, but that's just testing your demand.
Yeah.
But we, like, the fact that we had to shut something down for 6 months and then figuring it out was a lot.
Yeah. It's interesting
because,
like,
a lot.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of CPG brands, what they'll do now, because it's like so many people are just trying out different things.
Yeah, you build a product and then you throw it out and you see what the demand is like. Yeah. We didn't even have the product.
And then you just refund the orders. But now you know your demand.
And
And
we're
then
like,
they go, yeah,
oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah,
but doesn't that kill the credibility of a brand?
It doesn't. You do it with a different like name and stuff,
Oh,
but you're just
interesting.
purely just getting test samples. But this is like what people have done now. Now they've like figured everything out. But these are like
But also,
experienced
you have to
people.
remember the technique that we were using for broth wasn't like you take a powder and you put it in water.
Yeah, yeah. You're
But
making it.
We were
fresh.
making it. Like I'm talking like yucking straight out of your mama's house.
Yeah, I would replicate that.
Like legit.
I'm just imagining you in the kitchen and a bird and the beals on the side. We got another one. This is
It was actually, it was actually the moms. The moms had it come in. Like,
Oh my god.
I'm telling you, like everybody's hands were in there. Like, my father-in-law was out there making boxes. My father-in-law was labeling the jars with us. Like, nobody was safe, right? Because we really had to get these orders out.
If you're a part of this family,
Yeah, like you think you're clocking out? Like you think you're on vacation?
Grandpa, I'm tired. That's too damn bad.
That's literally it. It's an accurate description.
Keep digging.
All of us are going to sleep at 2 in the morning. And it got to the point where we're like, Nabil and I would have to put the mattress out. Like in the kitchen. And so at that point, we were like, you know what? This is, once the orders were out, the first initial orders that we had gotten were out. We're like, we can't do this in the house. So then we went into like.
wait. I have a question about that. So what was that first? So you shut down for 6 months, basically to figure out all the logistical challenges.
We had to ship out thousands and thousands of jars.
Wow.
Our capacity to make in one day was 32 jars.
Okay.
So you're around the clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the broth has to simmer for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Then you have to jar these broths and then you have to seal these.
Dang, if I had no
broths.
idea, I could have given you my crawfish boil pot.
No, but did you like calculate that? Like, while you was this like an after the fact of calculation? Did you calculate that while you're in the thick of it, like
your
to
pricing
project
way
out?
We were working backwards.
Okay.
We had a demand for a product that we didn't know how to do yet.
Yeah.
We were doing it for friends and family, and now suddenly we have to figure it out for thousands
Scaling.
of people.
And making
right?
sure that the quality is good and, and consistent.
So now
Exactly.
we're like, do we need USDA approval? Like, what's the licensing look like? Can it be done in the house? Do we have to be in a commercial kitchen? Like, what does packaging look like?
Yeah.
We didn't count for packaging jars nationwide,
and shipping.
shipping, what the cost was going to look like. We didn't have a budget for this.
Yeah.
So now we're like working backwards. We're creating a budget. We're going to look at commercial kitchens. Like, can we even afford it? So we started moving to a commissary kitchen. Our goal was to do everything. So I was sourcing ingredients. At that point, it had become me. And Nabil like had gone back to work. He was, he had to be in, no more working from home situation. Now it's just me and making the broth, jarring, all of that. At this point, I'm also getting called to be on the show.
Fun.
Yay. So
No, it
like,
is great, but it's like, oh my
it's
lord.
great,
How
but
can I
it's
say-
alhamdulillah, but like it was
Yeah.
the doors were opening in weird ways and I just couldn't figure it out. Like, yes or no? Like, do we say yes or do we say no? So a lot of things were happening. And then that's when we decided, like, we cannot do this in-house. It's not doable in-house anymore. Like, we were drowning in boxes and jars. Like,
Your house smells great, I imagine.
no, I hated it. And I was like, get me out.
Put me back in this.
Yo, I'm telling you, I didn't choose this life. This life chose me, literally. My mom probably called me. You bet. My mom called me and was like, wait, I told you so.
Of course she's.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was like, I've been waiting all my life for this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we just started to scale. We're like, we can't do it in-house. At this point, we don't have the capital for it. So what ended up happening was we were creating batches and we were doing limited drops to bring more cash flow in. And so the cash that was coming in, we were building with that same cash. But there was not enough money for us to hire another person. So imagine like putting the broth at night, coming in the morning, jarring everything, now taking the jars back home because we're still doing shipping and labeling inside the house, and then dropping it off at the UPS. So like that was the thing that was happening. Alhamdulillah, by being able to do that, and being able to support those like cancer patients the way that we did, I truly believe that somebody's prayer carried us through that time, because we could not figure out how to keep the lights on for something that had such a high demand. So at this point, I'm like, all right, cool. We figured it out. We are now in the commercial kitchen. I got to hire my first person, and her and I are like tackling everything. Now we're working the warehouse, we're working in the kitchen, we're shipping and labeling, doing the marketing part, trying to build a social media platform. Like her and I were like inseparable. And that's how things started taking off. And then we had to scale even further because the demand is growing. We just don't have the capability to meet that demand. So I'm like, okay, we still don't have enough money. We're bringing in money, but we're putting every single dollar into the business. So I'm like, what is my option? Either we put in our personal finances and put everything that we own in at stake. So like taking the equity out on the house, or like we're trying to figure this out, right? Like we didn't want to tap into our like finances because we're raising kids. Like if we take everything that we own and we put it into a business, this business is not feasible. Like the kids do not have.
The kids suffer, not just you.
Exactly.
Like you can suffer, that's fine.
So
but
it was like, if we're going to build this business, it's going to be solely like we're going to do it the right way. No like asking for money, not pouring in our own like money. Like we're not going to do that.
But I think there's a value in that. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, to be honest. But like, I think in the early days, almost exclusively, it's better to have focus of where every single cent goes, because it teaches you discipline. It teaches you focus. I've seen so many cases where people have raised a lot of capital and they just misallocate and they haven't validated their assumptions early enough on. And so I think there's like a massive value. Now there is a value of raising when you feel like you've got your skis in motion and you've got things moving. But I mean, do you find that to be kind of the case? Like do you agree with that philosophy?
So if I go back to a year ago, right? At that point, we didn't want to raise. Because you have to remember, a broth didn't exist in the halal space for one. Convincing an investor in a niche market that this broth was needed was not
difficult.
Something they could understand. There was one brand that had done it, and it was no longer doing it. Saffron Road had tried doing bone broth. I mean, just broth in general, not bone broth, in a Tetra Pak, and it was being served in Whole Foods. At some point, they took it off the shelves, and they were no longer doing broth. And there was no shelf-stable broth that existed in these aisles. Because it was no longer on the shelves, now you can't have a comparison of a halal product being needed. And it was really, really hard to convince people that this is a good business to invest in.
It's an upsell on something that doesn't exist.
Well, the fact that it was in Whole Foods and then removed is also like not helping in some capacity for whatever reason.
Exactly.
Right?
We don't know what the reason is. And so we're like, okay, you know what? Like, we'll figure it out. We're also positioned ourselves in a way. I think like this is so important for people to remember, especially when they're building food in the halal space, is the cost of halal ingredients is crazy. So when you are looking at like, you want us to mass produce a product and you want us to do at the scale that you want us to do it, it is not possible because the margins are going to be so ridiculous that somebody's going to look at it and be like, what is the profit margin here? And it's hard to do, right? Because halal meat costs so much money. Now you're looking at a halal supply chain. You're using the finer ingredients. You're making your organic product. You need your certifications. You need to create a shelf-stable product. And now you have like no money to back it up, right? So then I was just like, we're not going to ask investors for money because we cannot prove that this concept is great yet. I applied for an SBA loan. And people were like, you're not going to get it. Like, it's really hard to do. SBA loans are like, it takes forever. Alhamdulillah. I applied for the SBA loan in August. I got the loan it closed in December. And I had money to scale the business in January. That January, I also was competing on Next Level Chef.
Oh, wow. Okay. But how much did you raise? Or I guess loan.
The loan was for $100,000.
Okay.
And it was primarily used for like
Equipment,
okay.
commercial kitchen, and just getting our supply chain set up.
And I mean, you have to have, granted, like some degree of confidence, right, to still get this loan. So what were some of the levers that it wasn't like enough to go to an investor and be like, hey, like I still want a great idea, because you kind of want the position of leverage of, hey, I have a demand. But like what it was enough to like go get a loan. So what were the levers at that point that made you feel comfortable? Or was it just seriously like, hey, I need some extra support. We need these types of commercial grade quality things to increase our production. You know, what were kind of some of those variables that you guys were looking at that time?
So at that point, I was like, okay, we got the capital. Now we prove to future investors that this is a scalable brand.
An operation.
And on top of that, what we wanted to prove was that halal is no longer a niche. And I wanted to redefine what that meant. And so it was like, okay, when people think about halal, they're like, is it a cuisine? I was like, it's not a cuisine. It's a disclaimer at the bottom. And if it applies to you, it applies to you. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not a type of meat. It's not a type of cuisine. And so that's what we wanted to change the narrative on. So then we took that $100,000 and we scaled to the best of our ability. Every dollar that was coming in. At this point, nobody's getting paid, right? Like the only people that are getting paid is our labor and Caitlin, who was my right hand. Nobody else is getting paid. And so at this point, we're like, okay, we're just going to scale. Let's make the demand happen. Let's show the investors we can do this as a scalable thing. And what can a premium halal category in the CPG space could look like. And so I started thinking about, I remember going to the competition, and once I was done with the competition, I was on my flight back. And and the funny thing is, I remember like my nani saying this when I was a little kid. It was like, you know, the dua you make during your suffer, the dua during travel it works. And I was like, let's test this theory. And I was like, at the end of this year, I need to close a seed round. And I came back. We're scaling. We're now in retail stores. Greenvine, I went into Greenvine and I was like, I want you guys to put our broth on shelf. And they were like, it's too expensive. And I was like, yes, it's too expensive, but it's being done right. And right now it doesn't exist, and people will pay for something that is good quality broth, that is doing something for them. It's no extra fluff. It's actually broth, and do it. So they buy us a batch and they put it in there, and we do a sample that day. Like it was like our debut. It's like their halal. They did a festival for their anniversary. It sells out, and 30 minutes tops. And they're like, do you guys have more broth in the back? And I was like, yeah, I do.
This time we're ready.
You were ready.
No,
so we're like,
we
refilled the stock right then and there. And that was our first retail partner. Alhamdulillah, we have been able to not only double the amount of jars that we put in that retail, we had an end cap.
What does that mean?
That's like, you know, when you walk in, and the first like thing that you see, it's typically the beginning of an aisle.
So it's like
It's
the
high real
prioritized,
estate.
sought
Yeah.
after item.
We had an end cap.
The best real estate.
Hardy Foods did that for the pie crust. I don't know if you remember him talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That allocation itself is so
First
valuable.
thing that you see.
Yeah.
And they're a believer, like it's working for us. They were the best partners to have a case study on the demand.
I mean, that's an amazing
Greenvine
case
is
study.
great advocates here in Dallas.
for people and just businesses in general.
We did frozen waffles, but we did a farmer's market at Greenvine. They do it every weekend. And a lot of the folks who were doing really good in sales are like, hey, if you guys want to like trial and put it in, like we can work with you. I'm like, just witnessing that was like amazing. Like they are really for small businesses, finding that first opportunity to really shine. And they have great talent. Like a lot of their team members are like people who came from like Central Market. Like these are very, very talented people who are working and building that brand.
Speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a team can really make it or break it for your business. And I think they've done it right. They've cracked the code on what it's like to build a community around a business.
Yes.
And I think because they pour so much into these small businesses, we pour right back into them. And that is so important. So if they hadn't taken a chance on us, I wouldn't have had that case study. I wouldn't have had those numbers to show and make a case. So we have not announced it. This was only a LinkedIn situation, but we did close a seed round in December.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
How's that
so,
feel?
you know, like it felt great because
Yeah.
it was like everything was working out,
Yeah.
right? And we are now like looking at scaling full on production.
What?
And SKUs.
Are you at liberty to share like who the investors were as well as what the amount
So
was?
we have 2 angels and we have
Literally
one
or figuratively?
VC.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
2 angels. One here, one here.
Write it down.
Take me back to the streets. I'm ready to go.
The fact that like you guys know, like you know, like they pulled me out of Atlanta, but Atlanta didn't come out of me.
The chapters on this episode is gonna be Maryam not in the streets. Maryam in the streets. Maryam not in the streets. Maryam in the streets.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So we are working with Friday Ventures, and they are a VC, and they're like our biggest investor. Then I have 2 angels, and they've essentially like we raised like $500,000.
Alhamdulillah. That's awesome.
Alhamdulillah.
And it felt great because raising $500,000 for a niche brand in the CPG space was fantastic. Because now what's going to happen is that we really get to own a category in the premium halal space and do halal food right. And I think that's what people needed to see is that if you, because the thing is like I could have scaled, right? I could have gone to a manufacturer and given you extracts and powders and broths and do like whatever I needed to do just to make an extra buck.
Yeah.
You know, but we didn't do that. We have been slow and we've been steady and we're doing the labor. We're doing the jarring. We're doing, you know, like it was so funny. We had somebody come in. They were like, oh, I thought you had a machine for a label. And I was like, it's been 2 years of operations and we're still putting labels on our jar by hand.
Wow. that's sticky fingers.
But you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Those are the things that people don't see.
Yeah.
So then you're like, then you run into this problem. And I'm sure like you guys hear it too. But it's like, why do halal products cost so much?
Well, let me show you the episode of how it's made.
Yeah. No, come through. Like, come to the kitchen. We'll show you.
We'll accept that invitation. We have it on the record now.
No, we're all transparent. Like
Behind
we're
the scenes, that'd be
transparent
cool.
about
Actually, behind the scene, it's
How it's
actually,
made?
Yeah,
how it's actually made.
yeah.
How
Would you
it's
be down?
actually
Walk
made.
us through the kitchen. That'd be
The
cool.
warehouse and everything.
Yeah.
Like we assemble our boxes by hand. We put our labels on the jars by hand. And the funny thing is like we have a mason jar. Like everything on like that jar is true like blood tears and like everything that we say that we're doing it too like with that
and
jar.
It's a tough mason jar. Like I appreciate that you guys do it in glass because I do think that maintains like high quality, like the broth itself. And so, but sometimes people even cheapen out on the type of jar that they're using. So, but every step has been this level of like perfection to the best of your ability. Has there ever been moments where people or advisors were coming like, oh, you got to cut this out, you got to cut that out?
Yeah,
And then
100%.
we're
Even
like,
when we
I'm
were
good.
raising, there were a lot of conversations we were having was like, how do we cut cost on margins and production and operations, right? And I was just like, we can do that, but then you're asking for a completely new product. I was like, this product,
Yeah, you're losing my moat.
Yeah.
it's not what it's going to, like what it is right now and the traction that we have because of what it is, you're asking me to change that. We can't do that. And it was like, it's also from like where we source our halal meat from makes a huge difference, right? So we work with the first ever organic pasture raised farm in Hempstead, Texas.
Wow.
It was a husband and wife duo that created this farm, and they were, we got our carcasses from them. And that was like, and we did a blind test actually. We sourced halal meat from so many different places, and we made broth with every single carcass, whether it was from a local grocery store, from a butcher, from the biggest halal manufacturers in the industry, from the farm. And everybody said, who tested the sample, that there was this level of clean broth and the feel that they would get when they drank the
pasture finished. Yeah.
and we were like, there we go.
Did you say Hamza, Texas?
Hempstead.
Oh, Hempstead.
Not everything about you, man.
I was like, yo, I need to go there.
I was like, do you want to tell them that you grow chickens?
Actually, there's one of my really good
We're
friends.
allowed to,
He
McKinney.
he wants to buy a chicken farm, so he's
Yeah.
been looking at it in the outskirts of Houston.
Well,
But,
from what I know, there might be some that are being sold right now.
Oh, interesting.
Look into it.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? And then like our beef bones,
Mm.
the supply chain. You know, for us, it's like so important. It was like the beef bone. So there's a shortage of livestock here in the U.S. People don't know that. And it's like, so imagine there's a livestock shortage, and now you are trying to source halal beef
Yeah.
to make the broth. It is impossible. And so then we're like, okay, where can we get this? And so we're like, New Zealand. How do we do this? And the thing is, the beauty about that is that like the meat is already coming from New Zealand to the US. But what is people's waste is our gold.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So that's where we were like, now we have the capital. Now we just really, really make the supply chain unbreakable. So when we say we want to do halal staples right, this is what I mean by that, right? Broth is always going to be that hero product, but there's so many things that we've thought about in the pipeline of what food could look like. No more like additives and sodium and frozen meals that you resort to. No more vegetarian broth, because that is the only thing that you can resort to. Yeah. The Knorr cubes or whatever it is, you may have to cut that out. Like the bouillon cubes or whatever it is, right? Like we're trying,
right?
And we need more people to believe in the halal businesses and the brands that are coming out, because without that community support, without those, you know, investors and that community, this is not possible. You can't scale.
It sincerely takes a community, right? Like through and through. You have to be part of it, but you also be able to find your ways to give back. And then, you know, when you have an opportunity where everyone can kind of join you on the table, people will show up. And it seems like consistently people have been showing up when you are finding ways to grow, right? And I think that's so lost when it comes to building these things, of all the people who are coming in to help out in all these situations, which is like such a key indicator of who you are as a person. But an important lesson is that when you're going into any journey, right, even if you're a solo founder, you have to know when to ask for help, when to find help, and where to get help. So you've mentioned a lot of goals. Alhamdulillah, you've been kind of staircasing your way up and up. And, you know, your last travel dua, one important one, was getting this VC funding, alhamdulillah, which you received. And may Allah put barak in the things that you're doing and increase you in your goals and what you want to achieve, far extend what you put your eyes on. What's your goal now for this year? What would be defining level of like success for you?
For us right now, the important thing is going to be to really hone our supply chain, make sure that it is unbreakable. Our focus for the brand has been becoming a manufacturer versus a food brand. Mm-hmm. So food brand is who we are, but I want to help other halal brands build their products as well. Why is it that we don't have a facility that is halal certified, USDA approved, but then also it doesn't do powders and extracts and stuff like that, right? Like, why don't we have a co-packer like that? And I think that's what ends up happening, is that you have to cut those corners somewhere. And I want our facility to become something where you don't have to cut corners. You are building a product that you truly want to build, and we'll figure out how we do it. And so we want to keep all of operations in-house for as long as we can. So inshallah, and at the end of this quarter, we're hoping that we're able to create a full production line for our broth. We get the broth into more retailers, into more pantries, more homes, and then we want to start looking into what our product expansion could look like.
That's smart.
And then if that product expansion needs to bring new partners in to help us do that, then we will look at that. But for me, the goal is you have to fix one problem first before you can create another one, right? So I never wanted to mass produce the broth. I wanted to do it the right way, and I wanted it to be the healing factor that is like able to, it becomes a staple in a pantry, right? And if I were to mass produce, the mason jars would go away. It would be a Tetra Pak. And we wouldn't be rendering and using whole ingredients. You would be getting extracts. But we're not doing that.
So how do you scale maintaining quality?
With this funding, with this round, we would be able to source the equipment that we need to create a full production line.
Okay.
For the manufacturing, or okay.
For the manufacturing.
That's really smart, because I really like I really like the branding of it's actually, right? Because then you can go into like different product verticals, and if you have like the main manufacturing facility, that's a very good avenue. I mean, you talk about like basically taking this seed capital and really like figuring out like the supply chain cycle. I do want to take a step to kind of dive a little bit into this, because I think one of the challenges of consumer packaged goods and products like these is cost fluctuations. So like you talked briefly about like trying to source the right beef location and, you know, exploring different avenues, but like I'm ignorant. So like doesn't beef fluctuate a lot?
It does.
How do you account for that fluctuation in like your own calculation as a company to like determine margin? Or is it just like, hey, this is what we think it's going to be for the next 6 months?
It's a lot of trial and error. So with the livestock shortage, right? You're not getting the same bones that you were getting when you first started. So what ends up happening is when there's a price fluctuation, what we have to do is we now have to start source ingredients, and we have to bring the quality right where it was. So then you go into the recipe development again, and you create a recipe that is just as close to what it was before.
So it's a moving target.
It's a moving target.
Oh, wow. That's difficult.
And so we're constantly evolving. We're constantly improving, which is why the supply chain was a big thing for me, right? So now if we're able to create this really unbreakable supply chain, you know, if you ask me what my ideal facility could look like, is that we have a full manufacturing facility and we have our own farm. So we don't have to worry about where the food is coming from. The produce is ours, the meat is ours, and the facility is ours.
The feed, how they're taking care of everything.
Exactly.
End, yeah.
And that's the other part, right? With halal, I think people have forgotten that halal is a way of a life. It is not
just a method of slaughtering.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, so I studied nutrition at UT Austin, and it's like when we talk about like USD organic, grass-fed, pasture finished, or pasture raised, like those all have nuances. And when I talk to a lot of my non-Muslim, or sometimes even Muslims too, like when it comes to halal, expanding on like it is a way of life, it is how that animal is treated throughout its life, not just the method of its slaughtering. And so when you look at modern day scientific standards as USD organic or all these other things, halal actually encompasses, or technically by Sharia, it does encompass a lot of those factors. And so really you're getting all of that and bundled into it. But you know, obviously the regulatory boards that exist within halal, that's a whole nother debate if it's maintained or not.
And that needs
right?
to be like, that needs to be communicated, right? That's the educational part of a brand. And I think that's what we're trying to do as well, is that not only do we want to define what a halal category could look like, but also what does it mean when we say halal is a way of life, right? It's how you treat the animals, how you treat your ingredients, and that's the part that we focus a lot more on as well. So yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. Goals for us is going to be really just building the facility that we want to build and make sure that we're doing products right and we're not cutting corners.
Well, Maryam, if there's anything that we learned from this episode, I think the most important thing is perseverance. I think you've showed that even when you're uncertain, you got to take the next forward and make the best of the opportunity that you're given, and you know, let Allah kind of take the wheel. But I want to do one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up here. and you know you're in the food space, and a lot of times there's things that are, you know, overrated and there's things that are underrated. And we wanted what your take is. And these are all, no brand is involved. So we don't want to hurt your opportunities there. Okay, so first off, overrated or underrated? Number one, I see it all the time, especially when I'm at my beloved Costco. Dubai chocolate, overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Overrated. I agree. What do you think?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, overrated? Okay.
Mainly because I can't have it.
You know, I did have it, and let me tell you.
Okay, next one. QR code menus, overrated or underrated?
From a hospitality standpoint, I believe in that interaction, so I feel like they're overrated.
Overrated. Okay. Third, brunch.
Underrated.
Underrated.
I love brunch.
What's your favorite brunch spot in Dallas or DFW?
Come to Chicago, we're making one.
Oh,
Are you really?
I'm a chef behind a restaurant in Chicago.
Oh,
wait,
that's
what is
awesome.
it?
It's called Syrup and Saffron.
Syrup and saffron. Okay, you know what's funny? I was gonna put number 8, but I deleted it. It was gonna be saffron desserts. Overrated or underrated? Actually, I'll ask you now because it is related.
No,
Overrated or underrated?
Next episode, how the restaurant is.
We're going to Chicago later this year.
Yeah.
So I will let you know when the restaurant opens.
Amazing.
Hopefully we're able to have you.
Inshallah. Okay, fourth one. ASMR food videos. Overrated or underrated?
If I had to do it, I wouldn't be able to do, but I really get sucked into it.
Yeah.
So I'm like underrated.
Like I have to do this. Yeah, overrated for sure.
Gold leaf on desserts. Like when they put gold stuff.
Overrated.
Overrated. Yeah, I agree. Viral spots, like general, like on TikTok.
Overrated.
Ooh, okay.
Wait,
So
what is this?
overrated.
Vital? What is this? mean?
Viral, like virality.
viral spots.
Yeah.
But do you think there's a lot of like? I feel like a lot of the viral stuff is like very like purposely curated, so it's not as authentic. You know, it's like
Could be, yeah, for sure.
This is the way
Yeah,
I feel. I'm
I've
just a
found
rated.
in my research is that every time there's a viral thing and I try it, I'm like, what is this?
Yes.
But do you think it's because of the expectations you've set? No, but like I feel like sometimes even with like a movie or something, like I'll be like, this is what I expected it to be this good, and it wasn't, so it fell short. But if I had gone in with no expectation, it would have been maybe not great, but it would have been okay.
Yeah, it's possible. I think like when there's so many reviews and people are just yapping in your ear, like
Yeah.
you're going in with like an already a perception of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, no, I don't believe in food trends, and I don't believe in.
I like being surprised, you know?
I love hole in the walls.
Yeah.
Like,
Ooh.
you know when you're walking around and you're like, that could look real good.
Dude, yesterday I went to this Malaysian spot. It's called, I literally went to the back and shook the chef's hand because it's just a one-man operation. It's
Yeah.
called 1-1 Asian Cuisine. It's also halal, but it's an Asian mart in Allen. But it's like you go in and it's like a bunch of restaurants, and it's this one Malaysian spot in the corner. They have like this like butter prawn fried dish with salted duck egg yolk all over. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. You got to try it out. It's worth it.
Do they like have halal bagel spots now?
Yeah,
you can,
yeah.
put meats in there, and so there was one in Dallas that just opened up, but I recently went there. It's they do it's called early riser, so it's
Early
like
riser. Okay.
So you imagine like our moms making omelet. They put like the
I think I've seen this place.
Modi's.
Yes. Yeah.
Modi's, and their early riser with the jalapeno and cream cheese. I love it.
Next episode, you sample a bunch of bagels.
Yes.
Okay, last one was going to be, I just had it in my mind and I already forgot it. Wagyu beyond the usual. Like the usual being like yakiniku, right? But when people are like, oh, it's a Wagyu sausage, Wagyu burger, Wagyu pepperoni.
Overrated.
Overrated? Yeah, I agree. Well, that's a wrap. That is it. Well, actually, we got one more thing. This is a 1 of 1 right now. Okay? It's a 1 of 1. We figured it only made sense to debut our first one for you.
I love that.
And then here's this. And then
Dude,
the
that is
best
so
part,
good.
on the side, you got your brand, of course. And then
That's amazing.
And then I don't know if you really remember side hustle only. Literally and figuratively, it is on your side. So
I love it.
yeah. So here you go. Here's your baseball
This
jersey.
is amazing.
You're
Thank
officially
you.
on the team for Caravan, as well as all our other guests. We'll work on getting some back orders filled, just like
This is amazing.
Maryam did with broth. Well, thanks for joining this.
That was so amazing. amazing.
the Caravan podcast, and we're looking forward to all that you achieved this year, and inshallah we'll have to have you back.